What up, black man? Welcome to another episode of Do Make Something. This is just a video discussing 3 reasons I don't really listen to hip-hop and I don't watch PRN since I realize there's certain words that you cannot say on YouTube. So you may be wondering, why is there a connection between hip-hop and or illicit sexual content? The connection, I believe, and why I think it's important, especially as black men, is that it has a huge influence on us as black men, and it has a huge influence on us because we are men. And that's just a fact. That's just reality. I'm sure majority of you all, if you're honest with yourself, as a black man, you have been exposed to at some point in your life. I'm sure if you're younger than, I would say like 20, maybe even 25, you have had it, I would say, the worst. Because of technology, because of the internet. Like, it's so much easier now to be exposed to at the same time, it's also so much easier to be exposed to hip-hop music and hip-hop culture. For me, I'll give a little backstory. We'll start with hip-hop. We'll start with hip-hop. Growing up where I lived in a DMV, and in the household that I grew up in, nobody was really a big fan of hip-hop music. Not really. My parents listened to like oldies, R&B, that kind of stuff, you know. And I had an older sister, or have an older sister, that she wasn't really into hip-hop either. I think a majority of the stuff that she listened to as well was like R&B and things like that at that time. So we're talking about the 90s. I grew up, I was born in 89, so throughout the 90s and then eventually into the 2000s. And for me, honestly, growing up as a kid, I didn't really listen to a lot of music. I listened to music that was played around me. So if we're going on road trips, if we're going somewhere, if my parents are playing music, that's what I'm listening to. If I was riding in the car with my sister and she's playing music, that's what I'm listening to. But it wasn't until maybe high school when I really started choosing to listen to my own music. And it was a little bit of hip hop, but majority of it for me was house music. That's what I was really into. But I was interested in hip hop. What really got me interested in hip hop was in 8th grade. I was transitioning from the middle school that I was in. As we were getting ready to transition from the 8th grade to the high school that what our school was supposed to be funneled into, they had like an assembly where you would go and you would be introduced to like the different clubs and different things about the school so that you can get excited and have your own school spirit and stuff like that. And so during their assembly, there was this breakdancing club. And so in this breakdancing club, you know, they were going at it. They were like legitimate B-boys doing their thing. And for me and my friends at the time, we were geeked. We were super geeked about this. It's like, yo, what is this? This is amazing. And I don't think it was to say that I never experienced B-boying or that I never experienced breakdancing or anything like that. But it was something that really sparked me in that moment to be like, I want to know everything about this. That was the hook for me. Breakdancing was the hook for me. So I was interested and I wanted to learn more about it. As my father would encourage me a lot of times, is like, you need to do research and find out what's the history behind what you're interested in. You know, look it up, do some research, find out more about the thing before you get fully invested into what you're interested in, you know, or into what you're trying to commit yourself to. So I did that. Went to the library at the time because the internet wasn't as full as it is now, and we didn't have as much access to stuff as we do now. But I went to the library and I looked up videos, I looked up whatever I could, looked up books about hip hop culture, about breakdancing, about all that stuff. I was stuck, you know. I was like, I want to know everything about this. And of course, when you're looking up the history of hip hop, that takes you back to the mid 70s, late 70s, you know, early 80s, when the foundation of the music and the culture was starting to happen. And you know, that gets you like DJ Kool Herc, African Bambaataa, Grand Wizard Theodore, all that stuff, you know. Being there in New York at that time, I was holding on to like and interested in like the 5 elements of hip hop. You know, you got DJing, MCing, breakdancing, graffiti, and the fifth element, which isn't often talked about in hip hop, is the knowledge of self. So all of that stuff to me was like, yo, this is super cool. Like, I want to know more and more about hip hop. Okay, so that's we'll leave that there. We'll put a bookmark there for hip hop. That was my connection with hip hop. For which again, I don't think you can ever have like oh, this is great. This is how I got connected to. It's not the same thing. And I'm going to make the connection between the two. as we get into the 3 points of why I can't really consume this stuff anymore, you know. But for pornography, which I regret, I was introduced to pornography really young, probably like elementary school age. And again, like I said, I'm a millennial, born in '89. And so in the 90s and stuff like that, unless you had it like that, nobody didn't really have access to the internet like that. There were no smartphones, there was nothing like that. So there were only a handful of places that you were being exposed to or had access to pornography from. You know, like explicit pornography. And I'm not talking about like you see a movie and, you know, there's a sex scene, or you see a movie and somebody, you know, a woman is exposed. Now I'm talking about like, you know, hardcore. It is what it is. Either you were getting it because somebody in your family had it, like an older brother or a father. They had actual magazines or books. Maybe you were in a household that had access to explicit channels like Playboy, Spice, things like that. Or somebody had like VHSs, like actual movies cassettes that you would have to put into your VCR to play. You know, so I was exposed to that kind of stuff. You know, I was shown that kind of content. I was shown that kind of material at a very, very young age. And yeah, to this day, I regret it. I wish I wasn't. I wish I wasn't exposed to that stuff, because it really jacked up my mind. It really jacked up and led me to have a big struggle with pornography and masturbation and stuff like that. That's where it started. But let's hop into why these 3 different points of why I don't really rock with pornography and some parts of hip hop. Actually, a lot of hip hop I don't really rock with at this point in time. First reason, it's something good that's been perverted. So what do I mean by that? First, we'll do pornography because I think that's easier. Sex is good. Sex is a good thing. Intimacy between 2 people is a good thing, especially for me as a believer. Like the way that the Most High designed it, sex between a man and a woman in the confines, in the context of marriage, is absolutely amazing. And not just for procreation, but for the pleasure of those who are involved, for the man and for the woman. Well, pornography exploits that and perverts it and turns it into something that it's not supposed to be. It takes a lot of elements of what that intimate relationship is supposed to be and kind of flips it on its head, and comes from a very misogynistic and toxic place. For most pornography that's created, it's from the perspective of the male gaze. So it's catering to the man. It's catering to the lusts and the vices of men. And so, and the certain shots, the scenarios, the stories that are told, because, you know, there's not a lot of story when it comes to that kind of stuff. In all of that, it's perverted, and it becomes very, very selfish, and it becomes toxic. It's toxic, and it's sad, because for a lot of men, how they end up relating to women is influenced by their experience and the exposure to pornography, which is bad. Like, it messes with your head, it messes with your mental, and it messes up with your thinking of how you look at women, how you perceive women, and how you perceive sexual relationships. It happens, it's such a bad thing that it even invades marriages, Christian or not, you know, to think that you develop these standards from this material and this content that you've been watching, thinking that your wife or your spouse is supposed to do the stuff that you've seen in these movies from these actors. Yes, you know, I think as we grow older and we mature, we realize that the people who are taking part in this content, they're actors. Both the men and the women, they're actors. There are lights set up, there's cameras, everything. It's not genuine. And as much as the actors are trying to communicate how much they care about their partner in these scenarios and situations, it's still all acting. And so it's a perversion. It's a perversion of what's supposed to be romantic. It's a perversion of what's supposed to be intimate. It's a perversion of what's really God-given, that we're all supposed to, you know, we have the opportunity to enjoy it. Again, I believe the best time is in the context of marriage, because of the emotional, spiritual, and physical connection that happens when you engage in sex. You know, I would say hip-hop has also been perverted. And what I mean by that, and, you know, I'm not that deep. Like, I'm not that deep into hip-hop culture or history, but I think I know a little bit. From the foundation of hip-hop culture, you know, it started as a way to help Black and brown people who were in the inner city dealing with the stresses of life, and it was an escape and a safe way to still, like, to stay out of trouble. A lot of people needed that at the time, and a lot of people still need that today. You know, there's so many things, like so many ways to get in trouble as a youth, and, you know, as a young person. And so hip hop was playing that role. It was that escape, that opportunity. Whether you were going around, you know, doing graffiti, sure, I understand that that's illegal. But whether you were doing that, or you were learning to MC, or you were learning to b-boy, you know, to break dance, b-boys and b-girls, you're learning to break dance, or you were learning to DJ, you know, all this stuff, or you were taking time to learn about yourself. You were getting the knowledge of self, learning about your history, learning about your past, learning about who you are, who you're coming from, who you're supposed to be. You know, that's all of that was coming from I would say, and I know there are a lot of people who would push back and disagree or whatever, but it was coming from a genuine place of helping and influencing and having a positive impact on the community. Well, sadly, I think a lot of that culture and a lot of the elements that were tied to hip-hop culture have been perverted, which is something I'm going to talk about in another video. Like, there were things that was developed for our culture, particularly as Black people, and that we continue to do for our culture. But now at this point, it's been taken and used in a destructive way that's destroying our community. And honestly, I believe, just a little nugget, honestly, I believe, especially as Black men, we have to stop doing stuff for the culture. We need to start doing stuff for our community. Because the culture, people take our culture, and they've been doing that, and they use it against us and destroy us. What we need to focus on more is developing our community. They're not the same thing. But to continue on that, those elements, that heart, that root, that source, and that inspiration of what comes from hip-hop culture has been taken and spread all over the world. And at this point, I don't even think people realize what the initial 5 elements of hip-hop are. Or even the one, I think, which is the most important, is the knowledge of self. You know, they just take it and use it as a fun thing. And a lot of corporations and a lot of people use it, take this thing that was supposed to be good and developing and helping people in hard times and difficult situations to create community, and now using it in destructive ways, using it to go out and get drunk, to go out and treat women a certain way, or to treat brothers a certain way, violently, aggressively, in a toxic way. It's been perverted, and it's not where it was supposed to be, you know, not at its intentional place, at least from my understanding of it. The second reason I don't really rock with hip-hop is the misogynistic undertones or elements of both things. Sadly, I think this one's kind of clear to understand that how women are looked at and how women are treated in hip-hop and in is not good. And I understand that there is this movement now in regards to pushing and kind of encouraging sex work and things like that. But I think at the heart of it, again, it comes down to treating women, particularly as for us as Black men, treating our women, Black women, as products, as just objects, as tools for our personal satisfaction. And that is not at all God's design for women. They weren't designed to be tools. And yeah, I understand some people say, well, you know, Eve was created as a helpmate for Adam. Well, that's a helpmate. It's not a tool. It's not a servant. She wasn't an animal. You know, she was there to relate to him and help him with his deficiencies and things like that. That's a relationship. They're equals. Even in the New Testament, in the Bible, it talks about that we're equal. You know, she may be considered the weaker vessel, but we're supposed to honor and serve one another. It's equal. But yeah, in that content, in that culture, in the stuff that's created that we see, it treats women poorly. And we need to stay away from that, because that messes up our mental mental. It messes up our thoughts. It messes up our perceptions of how we should relate to women. If only thing you see is women being a tool for your pleasure and your satisfaction, that transitions into the real world. And sadly, we're starting to see a lot of that stuff happening more and more. Like, I saw a video the other day where a guy was, I guess he flew a girl out, and he did all these things for her, and he had been talking to her for a couple of months and whatever. And they get to this nice trip. I think it was out of the country. They get to this nice trip that he paid for, because he said he was going to pay for all this stuff for her, and, you know, everything's going to be handled. But they get there, and for him, he's saying, like, well, this girl's not giving up the cheeks. Like that was his expectation. Like, she's supposed to sleep with me. She's supposed to give it up to me after I've done all these things. I flew you out. I've done all this stuff. Now, in this exchange, you're supposed to sleep with me. You're supposed to have sex with me. You're supposed to give it up. It's supposed to be an exchange. Yo, that's a level of prostitution. Like, you're portraying yourself as somebody that's supposed to be romantic, that you care about this girl, that you're whining and dining her and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, all you really want to do, you're just trying to treat her like a glorified prostitute, which is not right. But a lot of that comes from what we see, I would say, in hip-hop culture. Like, if you throw some bands at some girls, she's supposed to do whatever you want. What is that? That's because we have objectified women. And we have objectified our women. And it's the same thing. If you're looking at, she's just a servant for my desire. She's just a servant and a tool for me to get off on. That's messing up our mindset. That's messing up how we relate with women, how we see women, how we see our sisters. So for me, what really changed my mind, and I can't remember where I got this idea from or how it came, but the idea is, like, in every song that women are called bees or hoes or whatever, place somebody that you know and that you relate to in that place. So if they're addressing and calling your sister a hoe, or your mom out of her name, or a friend that you have, a woman friend, are you okay with that? Are you okay with listening to that kind of music when they're talking about your sister, when they're talking about your mom, when they're talking about your aunt? Are you okay with that? And, dancing, being excited about it, or just playing it real loud, are you okay with that? In the same way, I've had experiences, being honest, when I was struggling and watching and stuff, thinking about, yo, what if this was my friend? Would I sit here and watch somebody do the stuff that they're doing to my friend or to my relative? No, yo, that joint made me sick to my stomach. But it's just, in my mind, it's the same thing. Like, why am I sitting here watching this happen? Why am I encouraging this? At the time, it's because I had a perverted mind. I had a perverted thought. I thought it was okay. But oftentimes we don't try to do the work to understand that, like, yo, that's what's happening. Especially if you're watching content, and which is the case for hip hop. Majority of the times it is. It's a black woman. And for a lot of black guys I know, sometimes they watch, with black individuals in it, with black women in it. Why are you okay with watching your sister be treated this way? To be exposed this way, in this vulnerable way, and being mistreated and objectified? Why are you okay with that? You really got to check your heart. You got to check your mind. Like, that's not good. That's not good. And if we're on this journey to try to become beneficial men, we need to change the things that we're okay with. We need to change the things that we accept and that we encourage. It's not good for our women to be treated like that. It's not good for our women to be considered thoughts and hoes and bees and all that stuff. Stop that. Like, we really have to stop that. Like, and I get it. Like, some people push back and like, no, it's not the same thing or whatever. And I know, I get it. For a lot of guys, they don't really care until they have daughters. They have children and they have daughters themselves, and then they start like, dang, I don't want my baby girl to be treated like this. And they start to remember and play back on all the times that they were being F-boys, or the way they were dogging out women, or if they were in a single parent situation and they're not okay with men dogging out their mom. They had feelings about that. But we need to look at that in our community, women as a whole, sisters as a whole, regardless of their class, regardless of their education. If she looks like you, in my opinion, if she looks like you, she is you. Same thing for brothers. If he looks like you, he is you. And I get it, not every relationship is going to be buddy-buddy or, really deep brother and sister bond. But I think there's a level of respect we need to work on, especially within our community. Because again, nobody's coming to save us, Nobody's caring about us. Nobody's trying to help us. And so as men, we need to do the work to get our minds right so that we treat each other better, and so that we can be beneficial for our communities and beneficial for our people, for ourselves, for those around us, men and women. And again, that's one of the reasons I don't really rock with that. Not with hip hop, not with because it treats us, and a lot of music and a lot of those films and a lot of that content, it treats us as objects. It treats us like animals. It treats us like we're still in slavery, and people just view us as bucks and Jezebels and just tools to breed and tools for self-gratification. That's not what we're called to, and that's not who we are. But we gotta push against that. We gotta fight that. We gotta change our minds, because we've been thinking a lot of bad stuff. And the third and final reason is it creates a false reality. And that kind of touches on some of the things that I mentioned in the first 2 points. But it creates a false reality for both hip-hop and for a lot of things that we see in the video or that we listen to in the music. A lot of that stuff's not real. It's not real, and it's creating a culture and a lifestyle that's actually not beneficial or long-lasting or sustainable. If you just get money and always throwing it out on or drinks and cars and running in demon time all the time, you will not live a very long time. And it sucks because we're seeing that. A lot of young hip-hop artists who are pushing this kind of content, they're getting arrested, they're getting killed, they're getting caught up in like sex and rape charges and all kinds of stuff. That's not sustainable. That's not beneficial. That's not helpful because it's not real. It's not, even within this white supremacist world and society that we live in, yeah, it breaks a lot of laws. But I would say even in God's world, in the way that he wants us to live, that ain't sustainable. That's not right. It's not righteous. It's not helpful. It's not beneficial to just constantly be chasing self-gratification or always popping off on people and going and shooting up people because you have disagreements with them, or jumping people or doing stuff like that. Like, that's not helping us. It's not teaching men how to be men. Like, we should be able to sit down and have conversations and disagreements and discourse and still have a constructive end. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm not encouraging people to disrespect you or to walk over you or something like that, but you can handle it in a way that it doesn't resolve in somebody dying or somebody going to jail. But that requires us to be mature. It requires us to think different. It requires us to see each other differently. And I don't like that in a lot of the music that we listen to is creating a false reality that's not helping us. And the same thing with looking at content and videos of women just being completely submissive and doing everything at the whim of what's happening on in the scene and stuff like that. That's not real. It's not real. A lot of times the stuff that we see, again, those are skilled actresses doing a lot of things that most women do not do. And it sucks because it impacts our women too, because they feel like they have to compete with these superstars. They have to compete with video vixens. They have to compete with Instagram baddies. Why do you think so many women are getting BBLs? Why do you think that's happening? Because there's this culture and these images and these thoughts and these ideas that we as men have been supporting. We want to see it, because it's been put in music videos. It's been put in these places, and it's like forcing women to have to do these things to gain attention. But we are creating standards based off of a false reality. But if we don't fight against that, if we don't open our eyes and take off the rose-colored glasses to realize that, this stuff is twisted, this is not right, we're going to keep propagating it. We're going to keep regurgitating it and just eating it up over and over and over again. And as black men, we need to say, no, this ain't it. This ain't it. I don't want no false stuff. But we really have to agree to that. We have to agree to that. We have to support that and be like, nope. I want to love women and honor women and respect women for who they are naturally, and not based off of some false reality that I have seen in or that I've seen in videos or I've heard in lyrics and things like that. This false reality that we accept and that we expect when it comes to the real world, how we relate to women or how we even carry ourselves in places, thinking that we can just smack people upside the head and like there will be no consequences, or just respond out of anger and there be no consequences, or be careless with our money, be careless with what we consume in our bodies, whether it's drugs and alcohol and stuff like that. Just being wild, going out being promiscuous and being like, no, there are no issues. No, there's a standard of life that's going to be beneficial to us if we take it seriously, if we want to be honest about it. So for me, those are those three things. Creates a false reality. Again, for hip hop, I understand there are some stuff that's actually real, and that can be helpful. But sad to say, I think the majority of it is creating a false reality. Misogynistic in how it demeans and objectifies women, and to some degree men, and both things, hip hop and and of course, like I mentioned before, it perverts something that's actually good. So for me, that's why I can't really rock with that stuff. I can't. I would encourage you to challenge and question, like, take into consideration the stuff that I said, the stuff that I shared. Like, is this stuff really beneficial for you? Is it really helping you on your journey to be a beneficial man? Is it helping you with your mental, helping you with your thoughts and the way that you perceive the world? Or is it distorting it? Is it perverting it? Is it messing it up and keeping you from being your best self? Question that. Ask questions. Think about that. the lyrics that you listen to, the songs that you like, the artists that you like, the stuff that you watch on, explicit websites on your phone or on your computer. Because again, it's readily available everywhere now. You're hard pressed to, a decade or so ago, it's hard pressed to find something. But honestly, take a step back, reflect on that, ask yourself, is what I'm consuming actually beneficial for me? Is it helping me to be good for myself and to be good for my community? How I treat women, how I treat my brother. Is it really beneficial? Or is it detrimental? Is it actually making things worse? Thank you for checking this out, Black man. Continue to protect your mental. Find time to create. Find a way to manage your mental health and your emotions. Have that emotional release valve. Stay safe and continue to do this work to become beneficial for glory and for good. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.